right, guys, just another video, mass neuromodulation, DARPA's bold new neuroscience professor, James Giordano. Okay, guys, so this is just a presentation he's doing, okay, PhD, an expert in the field, and an expert in neuroethics and the legalities, and many other areas that this guy is very busy, expanding this market and telling people like, um, at West Point and other uh, military contractors and other, people involved, like the Department of Defense. This is all about the IEE network, the smart dust, and using electromagnetic weapons systems and platforms of control where they can alter our bodies, alter our brainwaves, alter our DNA at a distance, and are interfering with the cellular functions of the body, programming the cells, programming the brain activity. Okay, that's what this warfare is all about. That's why your family and friends won't wake up and, they can't connect the dots between all the different, personalities that surface in them, because literally, like, it's just a game that these people play with people's identity. They don't care about your identity. That's why they're trying to hijack it and merge you with machines. And you just didn't know it. You didn't understand what was going on because they kept us distracted for so many years. But all along in the background, this was going on. People tried to warn, people tried to say something about it. But let's break this down and just go through this. I think it's interesting. And I believe this is at Georgetown University. So let's just listen to what he has to say.
Hello, I'm Dr. James Giordano, professor in the departments of neurology and biochemistry, and chief of the Neuroethics Studies program at the Pellegrino Center for Clinical Bioethics here at Georgetown University Medical Center. Our ongoing work in the center has focused on those ways that neuroscience and technology, somewhat colloquially referred to as neuro S&T, engages a whole host, a variety of different applications across the spectrum, from not only what's viable in medicine, but ever more what's become part of public life.
Remember, I told you this is going to be the new healthcare, wireless healthcare, tissue engineering, and cellular engineering at a distance, gene therapy. How lovely.
Our capabilities in neurosciences in many ways are being seen as bold, literally bold, going bravely sometimes where we haven't gone before. But the question is, do we have an ethical system that's able to deal with the arising issues, questions, and problems as neuroscience becomes ever more not only tenable, but part of the trajectory and realizable?
And scalable, don't forget about that, in a broadcast system where the military and the government under national security is very heavily involved, hiding behind national security as the excuse to suspend people's rights, their human rights. I'm not talking about the Bill of Rights or Constitution here. That's long gone. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about they decided to make you not human. Okay. And it's not for the better because it's only to manage you and dumb you down and control you. It has nothing to do with all the, fake scientists that get out there and start promoting it as the best new thing, to heal disease and to extend life and to allow people who are paralyzed to function again. That's not what it's being used for at all. It's being used to go after anyone that doesn't follow the mainstream narrative. They are interested, like the GIFCO says, the Marines are operating domestically to use intermediate force capabilities. And part of that is the behavior modification that these new technologies give them. So they can come in your neighborhood, and get your whole entire community to come and go with you no matter what time of the day you come and go and cross your path hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times a day. And you call that normal behavior. But we're just pointing out the level of hijacking and control
on the 21st century world stage. Indeed, neuroscience and technology, neuro S&T, puts the brain at our fingertips, literally puts the brain at our fingertips, very often in increasingly non-invasive ways, allows us to look into the brain,
And by the way, that means non-invasive, where they can do it remotely at a distance wirelessly. They don't need to be near you and they can touch the functionality of your brain.
To map the brain, to study the brain, to understand the brain further, not so much as an enigma or a mystery, but more as a puzzle to be solved.
The way they map it and the way they figure it out is not only spraying us with the smart dust, but they've mapped the electrical signals of the body by a broadcast in which we are bathed in radiation in order for them to get that data. It's all wireless.
And this really underscores the fact that there's an ongoing dance, if you will, a tango, where both may lead simultaneously in an organized and orchestrated way of tools of observation, engagement and manipulation, and theories. And we come to the limits of those theories, and very often that prompts the development of ever more capable and sophisticated tools. In putting the brain at our fingertips, what it really allows us to do is to put our fingertips, and if you will, our futures, into brain science. So what we're able to do with neuroscience and technology at this point in time is to maximize our capability according to what's known as the three.
You guys see these images on the screen. It's basically probably, what our, handlers and the ones that are orchestrating the targeting and, pairing it with the AI, which is a weaponized system of AI, because many of us targeted individuals, we didn't really care when they came out with, ChatGPT and all these large language models. We're like, we've been targeted by the AI for the last like 25 years. I don't know where you've been, but it is weaponized and the military uses it to run the hyper game theory on subjects that they single out. And it's a collapse and control game that they play where they collapse your escape and force a conflict of engagement with them. Okay, so it's all about radicalizing and getting you to step into the role that they've cast for you, minus all this body data that they're reading in live time surveillance. It has nothing to do with cameras, guys. They can see everything with electromagnetic waves.
A's of engagement. We can assess the brain with plans to map connectivities in the brain to understand structure and function relationships. But once we understand those structure and function relationships, we try to access the brain on a variety of levels, from the cellular all the way to the social, from the individual all the way to the international. And in so doing, we affect the brain. Assess, access, and affect.
And this is what they're doing to targeted individuals. They are affecting our brains. Okay, I think that's a little more serious than flock cameras, guys, for real. You can see once you see the real information, just how far away people are from understanding what's really going down and how people get sucked into these fake choices, these fake problems that they just use in their propaganda in the Hegelian dialectic to mislead masses of people from understanding what, the right hand doesn't understand what the left hand is doing. In other words, they keep you distracted with crisis after crisis, usually fake, because they don't want you to know what they've done to you.
So what are these emerging tools of the brain sciences that allow us to not only expand our theoretical understanding of how the brain is structured and functioned, but perhaps also our realistic capability to engage that brain, to affect that brain, and to be less politically correct, perhaps to manipulate that brain? Well, in the assessment technologies, we have such cutting-edge devices and tools such as biomarkers, genetics and genomics to be able to map the genomes and individual genetics that constitute the structure and function of our nervous system, and in those ways maybe contribute to our thoughts, our emotions, behaviors, who we are. The neurogenetics of identity, if you will. Brain imaging that allows us to view the living brain.
All he's saying is on a cellular level, he can affect the nervous system and the functionality of the nervous system to produce the results they want. Usually it's just trying to collapse the nervous system
in relatively real time. And of course, this allows us to not only model the brain, but to map the brain, very much the same way that cartographers of old mapped those ever-expanding boundaries of what was known and what was not known, of the ecologies and world in which we live. We're mapping the ecologies and that world, that universe within, that is the brain mind. But in mapping the brain and identifying these structures and these functions, we develop capabilities to access them, essentially to target them. And here we see the interventional neuroscientific and tech.
You guys see what I'm saying? He's openly saying that they are trying to target the brain. Okay, he's even using the word target. I mean,
Technological tools. Variety of technologically based pharmaceutics that allow us to utilize nanomaterials to access the brain in ways that heretofore were unimaginable and impossible. Peripheral stimulation, central stimulation, neural feedback, transcranial modulation that goes.
He's just breaking down all the different ways that they interfere with your brain all day.
Through the skull, but is not invasive, and then ever more invasive forms of deep brain stimulation. But we're taking that one step further to minimize the level of invasiveness to be able to implant things into the brain with only minimal or non-invasive techniques and technologies.
Oh, you mean like when you go to sleep at night and, you have dreams of being hunted and chased and, unalived again and again and again and again and, strapped in chairs and interrogated and, like those kind of artificial dreams that are synthetic being broadcast at your brain. So, you never really truly go into REM sleep. You're just basically being hijacked in your dreams as well. And you have to fight these people even in your dreams. This is the capabilities that they have. And this is the competition game and conflict that they're bringing with plausible deniability, keeping many of us up for years, not being able to recover or rest, and programming the brain under sleep deprivation, torture, and electromagnetic carrier waves, bringing data directly to the brain. The brain unpacks it, follows the instructions, and carries it out. Okay, so it's all synthetic manipulation using the technology to interfere with our ability to test reality.
We're yoking the brain ever more to computational interfaces and building from that neuroprosthetics and neuroorthotics that allow us to essentially rebuild a broken brain. But none of these are capabilized or possible without some of the derivative tools and techniques that brain science brings to the fore, brings to its workbench. These include things like artificial neural networks that can be modeled and then put into computers. And then the reciprocity of those computational systems with the brain to develop AI, artificially intelligent technologies that are indeed reciprocal and cooperative. What we see that brain science is doing, like so many other fields, but perhaps best leading, if you will, the field, is engaging this new paradigm.
Like I said, guys, it's the digitizing and basically cloning, and this is real cloning, not like, you go online and you get a clone and you create a clone to automate your activities online. That's not what clones are with AI. Like the real cloning is a digitized, copied version of all your brainwave activity and all your neurological functioning, the cellular functioning, everything in the body that's electrical. It's been mapped and decoded, and the AI, it like makes the AI more human as they feed this into those networks. And, they're basically stealing your identity and creating a digital copied version of you that the AI can use to impersonate, that the AI can use to be you. And in warfare, it's all about the setups and the impersonations that are done to many of us. Evil is done in our name, and then they bring attention to it like many of us have gone through. But this is the convergence of neuroscience technology, and the war is in your brain. It's over your nervous system. It's over your heartbeat. It's over your blood sugar. It's over your circulation. All these things have been infected with the smart dust and are transmitting your body data. They have turned you into a node, and they also can program the cellular function and brain activity and your nervous system, as you heard him say. They can directly touch it, directly interfere with it, remotely and wirelessly.
Paradigm of integrated scientific convergence, ISC. It brings together the natural sciences, biotechnology, anthropological and social sciences, and the humanities. Why? Because neuroscience is like so many of the sciences, aims, seeks, orients to address, if not answer, the predorable questions of human anthropology, of human sociology, of our thought, of our philosophy. And what this allows us to do is to gain insights to what it is we are. The mathematician and philosopher René Descartes posited, I think, therefore I am. The flip side of that coin, if you will, is really, how do I think? And if I can understand how I think, what does that tell me about not only who I am, but does that then allow me tools, perhaps, to modify, modulate, direct, self-engineer who that who is? And what this allows us to do is it gives us the toolkit to be able to both assess and affect individuals and groups. And one of the key drivers of that is being able to assimilate, synthesize, and utilize in real and rapid time huge amounts of data. The tools of big data integrated with the tools of artificial intelligence have capabilized the brain sciences to a set of abilities, to a frontier of both probabilities and possibilities that just 10 to 15 years ago was almost unimaginable. Indeed, what we find now is that neuroscience fiction, nonfiction is becoming realized. Things that in the past seemed to only be the stuff of science fiction is now at our fingertips, is now a realistic both probability and ever more emerging possibilities as these techniques evolve and as those who use them understand that by bringing them together, we can open up a vista of things that we can do to assess and access and affect the brain. These include the use of gene editing techniques, probably most notable today, the use of CRISPR, Cas9 gene editing, gene scissoring techniques to be able to modify the genetics and genomics that contribute to the way our brain is structured and the way our brain functions.
Yeah, and like the fun vax that was deployed in the Middle East, to damage. They even said the military was using it to, take away radicalism. Okay, that's what they were using and spraying over the people. So it's been used in warfare, it's being used on the general public, and this is the level of different areas that they can affect, okay? And it's way beyond what most people think.
On the assessment side, more and more we're being able to utilize forms of neuroimaging to literally reconstruct the input to the brain that that individual was experiencing. In other words, as we see here in this slide, you can image my brain and from that image relatively reconstruct what I was seeing, what I was hearing.
And this is what they do with targeted individuals, obviously. I mean, coming and going with us, no matter what time of the day we come and go. We go to the mailbox, they do. We go to the garbage can, they do. We go wash our car, they do. We go to the other side of the neighborhood, there they are, crossing our path. Mimicking, mirroring in a robotic, hive-minded way, synced up. Clearly synced up against my will.
What I was feeling. And of course, we can put all of these together into new areas that allow the integration of assessment and intervention. Probably most notable among these has been some of the programs coming from the BRAIN Initiative, spearheaded here in the United States by the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA. And probably the most exciting and cutting edge is one called N3, Next Generation Non-Invasive Neuromodulation. The capability to put vast arrays of sensing and transmitting electrodes deep within the brain in a non-invasive or minimally invasive way to allow real-time access to read from the living brain and write into the living brain remotely.
Do you hear what he's saying, guys? So this is exactly what we're saying. I'm just trying to illustrate, that they can write into the brain remotely and alter the chemistry, alter the electrical signals. They can alter the cellular function of your body. And he's even talking about doing remote surgery, gene therapy and alike remotely, and altering the human body remotely, which many of us targeted individuals, they have tried to shut down our bodies through the torture and through the signal torture and the wave torture with this technology, as, of course, it's all justified because they can profile you and do these threat assessments that basically AI has also been programmed to do. And so this is really, really, really bad. And we have to wake up to it. We have to acknowledge what's going on. Like I said, this is going to be the new medical system, the wireless remote medical system. And if they decide that they want to alter your memories, they want to alter your brain chemistry, they want to alter your body to give you cancer early so that they decide when you die or how long you live. This is the power that's really being given and has been around for a while. And people need to catch up. People need to wake up. People need to understand just how bad it really is. And the only way forward is to understand this information and what they're meaning to do with it. Like I've said, in this new telehealth care system, wireless remote gene modification therapy against your will, really. And, they can store information right in your DNA. They have turned your body into a node, into a computer that transmits and receives data on a network.
Through the cloud, through the web, via distance, across time. And then if we push the envelope a bit further.
Oh, you mean like quantum sensing and stuff like that? Well, I mean, this is a real technology, guys.
We begin to see the merger of those ideas that heretofore were thought as, well, perhaps impossible, but now made possible through the conjoinment of a variety of different neurosurgical, biological, biochemical, genetic techniques. Probably most avant-gardistic of that is some of the work of the neurosurgeon Sergio Canavero.
Yes, turning us into robots, turning us into machines that can be managed and controlled.
The Italian neurosurgeon, who, building upon some of the prior work of Dr. Robert White, is attempting to complete the first human body-to-head transplant. Now, garish as that might sound, the motive is in fact benevolent. I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Canavero on multiple occasions, and the low-hanging fruit here is the capability to essentially do good. Yeah, what do we mean by doing good? Well, individuals whose bodies are ravaged by neurodegenerative diseases or other forms of diseases, but whose brain, whose mind is intact. Could we not perhaps facilitate a better quality of life? I mean, realistically, we can say that if someone donates their body to science as an organ donor, might we not use the body in its entirety? And of course, there are technical difficulties and there are huge hurdles. But building upon some of the prior work, the point we're at right now is, well, we could probably get some level of survivability, but now the question is to improve the quality of that survivability. And Canavero argues we won't know what that experience for the individual with a transplanted body is like until we go there. And yes, there are those who push back strongly on the ethical front and say, oh, it's dripping with the yuck factor. But there's plenty of things in medicine that are dripping with the yuck factor. And more than that, this is done with consent. And this is not a small queue of individuals.
Yeah, but everything they're doing to targeted individuals and experimenting on us is not done with consent. And he just basically minimized the whole horrible, horrible, immoral, disgusting nature of doing this to humanity.
Who want to be, if you will, the first neuronaut to boldly go, literally boldly go, where no one has gone before. This may even be seen as a learning exercise. What is it like to have a new body? What is the essence of self? What is the identity that comes as a consequence of that?
And another thing is I believe these people can live in a broadcast in the EMF and create clone versions of themselves, which can be projected on your brain and nervous system. So they can hijack your body, probably, most likely.
Bodily set of experiences that are now being processed by a brain. But this isn't fiction. This isn't just some rhetorical exercise. These are things that are actually possible in today's world of neuroscience. The domains of application certainly include medicine, as we see, neurology, neurosurgery, psychiatry, rehabilitation, pain medicine. Paraclinical domains as well, occupational issues and preventive medicine, working essentially before something goes wrong on healthy people to keep them healthy.
I mean, they've got a great history with that, using, psychiatry and psychology. Of course, remember in the 1800s, all the orphan trains and the families that were broken up, and then the hijacking of old world buildings, to turn them into, psychiatric treatment centers for those that, understood that life was not what they were being told in this total hijacking of world history, basically.
Occupationally protected and enabled. And now some may say this opens the door, or the proverbial Pandora's box, for discussions of what constitutes treatment or enhancement. But so much of what is preventive,
Or torture and just murdering people with the plausible deniability, like giving people cancer. And these people can clearly do it with this technology, but that's not the reason cancer is going up. It's not the radiation and the EMF and the broadcast programming people's cells and programming people's brainwave activity.
is focused upon keeping individuals off the slope, slippery or otherwise, of being made vulnerable to injury, disease, or simply the frailties of human existence. We have to ask then, how far do we go? How far should we go?
I'll tell you how far they go. He's talking about using these weapon systems in an immoral way to basically, keep things safe and save lives. Well, I'll tell you, they torture you with no due process, with no rules of engagement, and basically the military and the local sheriff's office and everybody gets involved. And they basically, do this death by 1,000 cuts until you're willing to hurt yourself or hurt others. And torture's been legalized in the United States under NDAA, I believe. So, they legalize the torture and then they suspend your rights and profile police you. And then by profiling you, that gives them the excuse to torture you to death in this way. And, and also do, the neuromodulation behavior modification that I've been talking about.
And if we're asking how far we should go, please understand that throughout human history, virtually any of the emerging tools and techniques that we have used have been put to work for agendas and initiatives of national security and defense. And brain science is no different. The interest in the brain sciences has certainly been manifest for decades, but has really increased with regard to the possibility of utilizing brain science in dual usable ways for warfare, intelligence, national security. And of course, that's an international agenda. Here, too, we have to appreciate that the goal is, quote, good. But who's good?
The war on terror was fake. It was made up. It was there to suspend your rights and to create this problem reaction solution and to condition you to do, they were trying to do things that they otherwise couldn't do unless they created the fake crisis and then wrapped you up in the Hegelian dialectic. And plus all this technology just made people blind to what was totally, completely 100% obvious of what was going down during those times.
Good. Justice, what rationale, to paraphrase the words of Alistair McIntyre, the philosopher at the University of Notre Dame. Militaries defend the polis, at least in an open society. And so should we, can we, will we use brain science for those orientations, those means, those initiatives, and our desires to keep our societies protected?
I love how people cover this up. Can we, will we? Yeah. They've been doing it for a really long time.
But what of other societies? What of different values? What of different ideologies? How will brain sciences be used there, and is there an absolute good? But let's back up. If we're talking about doing good for the polis and protecting those societies, what about the societies use themselves of the brain sciences? And ever more what we see that indeed what's happening is the brain sciences are becoming part of public life. Using the brain sciences in direct-to-consumer and even do-it-yourself means for educational purposes, for wellness purposes. And
you see, it's that expansive, guys. The system he's talking about. We are in an electromagnetic prison camp, and nothing we see or experience in this prison camp is of an authentic nature.
For lifestyle purposes, well, indeed, what we see is that neuroscience and technology offers not only the probability to push the envelope of what we can do to be able to assess and access and affect the human brain and its functions, which we'll colloquially refer to as mind, which in many ways are the seat of the self. The potential is there to harness these things in a variety of ways, to be able to affect human relations on local, regional, and global scales, affect human thought, emotion, behavior.
And done in my life, I'll tell you that.
And of course, when we're able to do that, then the influential process and posture increases dramatically. There's great power there. But there's more that we need to understand, not just in the power of the neurosciences, but in the diversity of neuroscientific initiatives and agendas on the world stage. Current predictions and estimations are such that China will be on pace.
Here's the excuse to develop it and run with it and do whatever they want with it, because we've got to compete with all these other countries. Really, the countries are merged together under the New World Order already, and they have been, since 1776. This engine we call the United States that's driven global government worldwide. Okay, so it's already in place, and there is no separateness, even though that's what they try to lead people to believe.
To essentially outspend and outpace the United States, if not the West, in quotes, what was formerly referred to as the West, within the next 10 years, by intent, with almost a 70% increase in research, development, test, and evaluation.
There's where you get targeted individuals being experimented on, because they have to rush to compete with other countries. So your family gets sacrificed and tortured and basically killed, because, they have no regard for human life. I mean, they just experiment on you, microwave you, burn your skin, burn the your private, sensitive areas of your body until you're peeing blood and, rolling around on the ground in your own house because of the electromagnetic weapon torture.
The next 5 years, and a predicted 50% plus gain in overall market share in the neuroscience and neurotechnology fields within the next 10 years. But clearly, it's not simply China on the global stage. Russia has profound programs in the brain sciences. Evermore, we're seeing the use of virtual currencies and virtual nations that are engaging the brain sciences, or at least utilizing its tools. And as we said earlier, even do it yourself.
They're going to monitor your brain waves remotely in a broadcast. And if you don't obey, they're going to cut you off from the money that they want to give, that they're digitizing, and it's all connected to your bio data, and it's like a medical dictatorship tyranny of obedience, and they know your brainwave patterns. And if you don't want to submit yourself to the behavior modification program and altering who you are, well, then they'll just, they've got other means of dealing with you.
Yourself initiatives and agendas, which for the most part are certainly ethically probitious, but here too, the possibility for corruption, the possibility for capriciousness, if not nefarious, within those communities raises its head and requires at least some look-see, if not some regulation and guidance. But the take-home message here is simple. Neuroscience and technology are not simply the Provence any longer of what used to be referred to as the West. It's a global enterprise, primarily among developed countries, which then raises the spectrum.
That's why, as a targeted individual, you can't get away even if you run to another country, just so you know, don't waste your time.
Of what are those ethical issues, focal ideas, problems, and questions as brain science in developed countries is utilized globally. How will it affect developing or undeveloped countries and their peoples? How will different developed countries' ideologies, ethos, ethics, morals, and laws affect the way brain science is studied, articulated, and used in a variety of its domains of application? We can view this, if you will, as more congenially as the good, the bad, and the ugly. But each and all of these might be relative terms. Who's good? How do we define good? How do others define good?
Again, all that moral relativism, all that is just him minimizing how bad people are that actually have the control and are running with this stuff. And we, as targeted individuals, are the evidence that it's only used for bad. And, you might, diagnose and cure and treat somebody with this technology and go around spreading that. But, even if they do that, I would just look at it as if it's fake, because the mass majority of people are being tortured by this technology and slow killed.
Clearly, once again, I think the benevolent motive here is to be able to treat disease and injury, to lessen the human predicament and improve the human condition. But like
The way they do that is hijacking what it means to be human, guys. Just so you know, the world peace is upon us, but it's by changing, genetically modifying who you really are at a distance, wirelessly, remotely, and gaining access, being under your skin with a network that reads all body data and transmits it in live time.
any other tool, it's reliant upon those who develop the tools and use them. And in some cases, there's misappropriation of the findings of brain science, the tools of brain science. And of course, who gets the goodies? And what does that then mean for the distributional asymmetries that occur within countries and between countries? And if we look to what some might consider to be the dark side, and perhaps verifiably and defensibly so, then we can see the intentional misuse of the brain sciences, its information,
I mean, that's all we've seen. That's literally all we've seen.
its capabilities to be able to affect our moral regard and our individual and community treatment of those who we define as norm or abnorm, functional or dysfunctional, and whatever labels of good or bad that we attach to that. And of course, if we just boldly go forward, what tends to happen here is there's a neglect of the necessary analysis, precaution, and preparation that can be used, and the leveraging of brain sciences in domains and dimensions.
What they do, guys, is they neglect the analysis. They don't care about the damage and the destruction that it causes. They don't take the precautions. They don't take the preparations, and they rush to use it in warfare.
That perhaps, although initially intended for good, generate considerable harm. The ethical, legal, and social issues and risks that arise from the brain sciences can be parsed into two principal categoricals, those that are focal to the technology. This is unknown science. We haven't been putting electrodes or devices or utilizing these cutting-edge drugs and other forms of chemicals and interventions and assessments for decades. And so we simply really...
That's all the gene therapy drugs that he's talking about, just reducing all medicine to gene therapy, mRNA, altering what it means to be human to cure disease and things of that nature. Always, it will come with backdoor access. And you're always getting more than you bargained for. In other words, they slip in all of this stuff and people don't see it, and it's right in plain sight. And it is the most wicked thing I think I've ever had to deal with and face in my life. I don't know about you guys, but this is the capability. This is what we deal with. And it's 100%.
Don't know what the intermediate and long-term effects might be. But more than that, the intersection of unknowns. The brain is the great unknown. It is, in fact, in many ways, what the cognitive sciences David Chalmers refers to as the hard question or hard problem, not only of neuroscience, but perhaps of the human condition. We don't know how that gray stuff of consciousness, of mind, of self, arises from the gray stuff of those cells in our head. And arguably, we could say, well, we won't know unless we go and use these technologies, but are we prepared for what we may find out and what we can do?
And the simulation of consciousness and the digitizing of all of humanity, merging humanity with machines is what they can do and what they've done.
The real capabilities and limitations. What is the validity and viability of uses of not only the information, but the actual skills, the technologies? What happens if the technology runs away from us, or what is sometimes referred to as incurs a Vexelblot effect? In other words, we change nature in ways that have not been changed before as the engineers of our own evolution, only to create something, if you will, of a neurological golem.
Really, and that's what they're doing, the hive mind monster. So he's openly telling the truth. He's just kind of saying it in a way that, it's like this could be something that could happen in the future. Well, this hive mind mob army has been created and is being directed and used all over America and all over the world, but really, really in America.
It rises up, and suddenly when we pick our heads up from the proverbial workbench, we must ask ourselves, what have we done? Neuroscience doesn't occur in a vacuum, certainly not a social vacuum. None of science does. And as soon as we engage and understand that social milieu is important to what drives neuroscience and how those projects of neuroscience can be used in various social iterations agendas and iterations, and clearly then we see a whole host of potential questions. Is the brain mind an inviolable space? Should we not continue these levels of profound and ever more sophisticatedly detailed assessments? What about autonomy? Certainly we can say that individuals
they come into your life, they hijack everything, they get a breakdown, they use torture to map you, basically. You know what I'm saying? And, they create cognitive models and then use those cognitive models in warfare against you.
Informed consent affords them the negative right of refusal that upholds their autonomy. But how informed can we be? And in fact, we're losing control of where the techniques, technologies, or even the data that is derived from them is held, the provenance, their custodianship. Well, what are we consenting to? And will there be the necessary contingencies, as our group at the Pellegrino Center has argued for years, that consent demands at least explicit transparency of whether or not there will be continued research in clinical care? After all, if we're asking
consent. Oh man, this guy's funny. Consent. Oh man, that was funny.
People to walk the wire of the neurosciences, we should tell them if there's a net underneath them or not. And that brings us down to issues of social awareness and understanding and what really does constitute treatment, protection, enhancement. And this gets back to the idea, the fact that neuroscience is,
and guys, this is a new market. It's like a new economy, basically.
Now a global enterprise that entertains differing values, histories, norms, pluralities, and diversities of the 21st century world stage. Not only in terms of how we will use the brain sciences and what we will study and choose not to.
I know how they'll use it. You will comply. We will torture you and alter your brainwave activity and your nervous system activity and everything that makes you you. If you don't comply, and if you don't obey and just surrender and submit yourself to this, greater good for world peace and, for the greater good, you need to give up your humanity because after all, human beings can't get along. So they just make this decision, and we look into the IEEE and we see, the body was put on a cloud in the 80s. And furthermore, the wide body area network is the mesh network that they use to transmit all body data in live time to be able to track, trace, database, and engage you. It is a war, and it is being used in warfare under the terrorism laws. They're just labeling Americans and going after Americans with these tools that he's talking about.
And what those research methods may mean and what they actually articulate, but then ultimately what is produced and who will get those things and what will they be used for? What uses? And here we have to confront once again the idea of dual use.
Hey, just ask me, man, and many of us targeted individuals out here. There's millions of us that are being tortured, sleep deprived, property damage, bodies on us 24/7, color sensitizing. I mean, this sounds like a psychiatrist put together this customized abuse. And this is what I mean about the technological dictatorship that we're under, guys. And the audacity of making this decision to hijack our humanity in this biodigital convergence where we've been merged with technology against our will. We don't even know what's going on. They're infecting all of us and have decided to move forward and push forward with this wide body area mesh network, reading body data, transmitting it to relays, transmitting it to a network. And like this man said, they can access the network just like a computer and like the smart meter on the side of your house. They can remotely access it because it's synced and relayed to a network. So all that data is flowing. And it's coming in the form of waves, carrier waves that contain data and instructions to the brain and the body and the nervous system and the cells and everything else. And if you're a targeted individual, they just off you, give you cancer plausible deniability. You see the way that works? And they just will do things in their timed abuse to let you know that that's who's doing it on top of it and make you watch the death of your own family members as they torture and harm and mind control and mind hobble your family members right in front of your face and get your family members to do every wrong thing, just programmed on the cellular level, guys. Programmed on the cellular level. So this is what we're dealing with. It's way bigger than just flat cameras. It's way bigger than just Apple AirTags. You know what I'm saying, guys? That's like ancient stuff. And most people that talk about that being what gang stalking is them using this bio data that they're stealing from you. They're digitizing, copying it, and creating a clone version of you. And they're doing many other things with your identity that's being stolen from you in live time. Your brain wave activity is being stolen from you in live time and shared with people on the wide body area network.
It's a balancing act. Our group over the past 15 years has been dedicated to trying to understand the possibility, if not plausibility, of utilizing a new approach to neuroethics. It combines a variety of different kits, a variety of different tools to create a more globally relevant, internationally capabilized neuroethics. It must appreciate cultural diversity on the global stage of those.
What gets me, guys, about all these people is they all talk about ethics while they've already made the choice to push forward and do what they're doing without consulting anyone or letting anybody know. So just remember that it's those kind of people that make these choices without regard for your will and your life and your family and your connections. And they can literally like take a person and do whatever they want with them. And literally, it turns life into a video game for the ones that are in control, sitting behind with their little headsets, doing neural remote monitoring and other things where they can interfere directly with the brain and the body in a torture campaign against all those that just get labeled or just, maybe somebody doesn't like you. Next thing you know, you're going to be tortured and tortured and tortured and tortured with these non-touch torture tactics of abuse and control. So we can tell you where this goes. It goes to torture. They legalize torture. It all fits together. Do you understand the Patriot Act, the suspension of our rights, the emergency and fake crisis that they keep evoking is to keep doing that. And in the name of keeping people safe and saving lives, they just won't talk about the technologies available to the local sheriff's office. They won't talk about using the local pastor in the 501c3 church under national security to be able to target innocent citizens and, share data that they shouldn't be sharing. And, everybody is there as a snitch and a rat and is offering you up any way possible, because it's all about the hive mind and syncing people technologically. That's why everybody comes and goes with you, no matter what time of the day you come and go. And that's why they're able to time the crossing of your path with the red and white shirts and stuff like that. It's layers of gaslighting that they're able to do when they can read your brainwave activity in live time and remember, directly interfere with it.
Different groups, cultures, societies, and politics that are researching brain sciences and putting it to use, and how the uses of those brain science are then being, in fact, articulated on the contemporary 21st century environment. It also has to examine and identify and respect local needs and values. In other words, create community canvases from this palette of diverse ideologies and ethics that we must appreciate. But where it gets very, very difficult is
that just means mind hobbling everybody and taking away the distinctions and the individualization of an individual. And, in order to keep peace, they just, broadcast on whole sections of the city. I've seen this in Seattle as well. And there's been that whistleblower from SIS, that technology company in Seattle, who's working on these platforms, a technology company, and they work together with military contractors and guys like this that I'm showing you right now to do neuromodulation and to do tissue engineering at a distance and to alter the cellular function of the body. And all the cells in the body are subject to this control. So if they don't like you, they just send information to the cells to do things they shouldn't do, and pretty soon you're gone. And you just get this disease.
Where there may be differences, non-alignments, non-consensus of what those ideologies, values, and ethics may inform.
Yeah, to get people to agree, just hijack what it means to be human and remote control them, is what he's saying.
And so what we're left with is something of the naturalistic question. What is and what ought to be in the brain sciences? Now, clearly, what we understand of this is that science and technology.
All of this to me, guys, is just garbly-goo because basically I'm not trying to diss this guy, but I'm just saying right now, like my own opinion of this. And it's always this presentation where, they're targeting keywords and using keywords, provide tools, insight, and understanding. That's what they're going to use it for. It's all these, moral high ground things that are totally fake, but just used to sell the technology. But we have to start talking about the dangers and how it's been used and how the military is using it and how the GIFCO uses it and how the local sheriff's office uses it, and how it's being used to hijack individuality and autonomy. There is no real autonomy, guys. I'm just trying to break it down for you. It's sad, but it's true, and it's the facts. We have to come to the realization. We have lost the ability to socialize with others, not because we've done something, but because they've hijacked that free association and have decided to play God and decided that you don't get to have that opportunity. You don't get to have that relationship, and they can just turn the person on you in a second with impulse management. How about the internet of behaviors? Look it up. Or the internet of bodies. Like I've shown the books and the teaching manuals and everything else before in the past, just, with the internet of bodies. Okay. Our bodies have been hooked to a cloud for a real long time.
Brain science and technology and ethics provide tools, insights, and understandings that allow us to look into the brain. And in that way, perhaps neuroethics might be something neuroethical by understanding the way we as humans.
And guys, when they look at my brain, they get enraged. They get enraged.
Engage the cognitive and emotional processes of what morality and ethics is. We might be able to gain better insight to how to use morality and ethics when regulating and guiding the brain sciences.
Yeah, that means just using the right, appropriate electromagnetic energy to program the brain to not think that way. If you might be on social media and you might be talking a certain way that's not politically acceptable or socially acceptable, but it's part of freedom of speech and our autonomy and independence and the sharing of ideas. And next thing you know, you've got the local sheriff's office coming over, paying you visits, and your property starts getting damaged. People start breaking in your house. The voice to skull starts happening where they're attacking your auditory center of the brain. Okay, these are the types of torturous experiences. Burning your skin, burning your nipples, burning your family jewels until you're peeing blood. It is all pain compliance, torture, and mutilation. It is tissue engineering at a distance, cellular engineering at a distance. And that is why cancer has gone up. They're just giving people cancer deliberately, programming the cells at a distance remotely in this broadcast system. So next time your family member passes away from cancer and they're very young or whatever, just remember I told you this. The radiation in this broadcast over all of us is really off the charts, and the radiation probably of the smart dust in our bodies, heating up the tissue and transmitting data and receiving data. Okay? We are a node. That is what they've turned us into. We transmit data and we receive data. And they have hijacked the functionality of the human body. And when they're torturing you and they let you know it to gaslight you, they will do things to your health that you can't even dream. Okay. In your most horrible nightmares, do you understand what I'm saying? 25 years of being sick and not knowing the reason, physically sick, weak, tired, sleepy, stomach problems, intestinal problems. And you might eat just perfect. But what I'm saying is that they are torturing people in warfare using these weapon systems to neutralize and to subject whoever is the so-called quote unquote threat. But remember when I said back in the day, 9/11 was just the pretext to turn this apparatus at the American people. And I was even saying it back then because they expand the definition of what it means to be guilty of something. and it becomes normal, lawful behavior, normal, protected, lawful behavior. And they expand the definition of what it means to be whatever the label is. And then they selectively target you and go after you with these energy weapons in your own house. 25 years on every level in this competition game over my survival, experiencing directed energy weapon attacks to my electronics, like I said the other day, and experiencing the electromagnetic energy weapon attacks, frying my upper respiratory tract and burning me so bad by electrocuting my organs that I ended up for 6 months in a recliner, unable to lay down because I was bleeding internally so bad. And the only thing I could do was crawl to the toilet to throw up blood and then crawl back to my bed and sit up or sit in the recliner. I couldn't lay down for over 6 months. And that's all part of the sleep deprivation torture as well, and the attempt to kill me and make it look like it's just an accident or I did it to myself. It can be denied on every other thing. And of course, the doctors, when you go to the doctor, they act sheepish when they put the camera down your lung and take a look at what's really going on. Oh, we found the problem. You know what I'm saying? And so they can burn your organs in your house as a form of compliance torture and behavior modification torture. Next time this guy speaks, he's going to remember what we did to him. You see what I'm saying? That's all the chilling effect. They were authorized to make an end of me. And all my family, friends, and people around me went along with it. Okay. And you can just see the hijacking. And this is not sensationalism. They actually contributed and participated and went along with trying to eliminate me from this existence, doing everything they could to deprive, deny, neglect, sabotage, undermine, collapse, control, damage to property, interfering with every activity and everything I put my hand to, getting in the way, gatekeeping, blocking, stopping, interrupting. And it's done by this technology as they send people to you to time the abuse perfectly. They show you how robotic everybody has become. They show you, they let you know, they grandstand. Psychopaths have to brag about what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Psychopaths have to brag about what they're doing. And that's just the bottom line. And then eventually they start coming out and bragging about their capabilities and the things that they do, like when they went in Venezuela and used directed energy weapons to, basically make 2,000 people stand down with like 200. Okay, these are being used all over the world. And they're just letting us know slowly by different guys like this, James, Professor James, they're just getting us used to the information, but selling it to us as if it's going to be used for something good. I think this guy should touch upon the dangers way more, and he does in other videos. I'm just saying, like, it's only being used to hurt people. And many of us out here are experiencing that innocent, no due process, a suspension of rights, national security, can't be investigated. The torture continues. The tactics are military style tactics of abuse and control. And definitely experts and professionals have customized the abuse in my life. You know what I mean? And they justify it. You're a risk, you're a threat, you're a danger. They make up the most sensational things about you to get other people to go along with it. And really, they don't even really need that. They just basically hijack the person's brainwaves and put somebody else's brainwaves in your mother, in your brother, in your sister. And that's why they act so strange and they get all glassy-eyed and vanish from being present with you, and then something else takes over. This is behavior modification that is going on in our families, in our relationships, in society. And again, I just want to emphasize the pain of this, that I'm having pain from just even realizing that they have stopped human association. Just get that through your brains today, guys. And I just emphasize this. They have hijacked free association with the people around you. And, it's just a profound thought when you look back at your history and your experience and what you've been going through. And when you start to describe it, you realize like this has to be either supernatural or something that has been done that we're just not aware of and not being told about because the capabilities that they flex on you and the way they grandstand and gaslight and provoke and do all these things, this above the law status that they display to us, bragging and boasting as they're making an end of us in a coordinated, organized way, in a hive-minded, mobbing you type way. It's the aggression and the hostility is manufactured through the technology and stirring these people up against you and making them obsess over you.
But I think we have to appreciate two very important quotes. One from the historian of science, Bruno Latour, that science doesn't necessarily bring answers. It only deepens and makes ever more profound the questions. And Goethe, who said that science asks what, philosophy asks why, but ethics guides us how. And so the take-home message is, how will we in fact engage new ethics? If brain science is boldly going, then we're going to need neuroethics that's brave. And I mean literally brave. That doesn't mean fearless. That means appreciating that there are things to be feared and engaging that terrain anyway, and doing it through a variety of processes that bring people together in more of a synthetic ethics.
Yeah, guys, that's called brainwashing. He, used fancy terms to describe it. Brainwashing.
Neuroscience and technology is a multinational enterprise. This necessitates and acknowledges at least respect, if not complete sensitivity and appreciation of cultural similarities and dissimilarities.
And by the way, guys, like on the TV, we're not just being hit with subliminals embedded within the TV shows and programs, but they're also using electromagnetic energy and to embed behavior placement through this technology. Okay, so it's directly to the brain, directly to the nervous system, programming the brain to think a certain way with a prepackaged synthetic brainwave signature that's not your own.
These non-identicalities in culture can create very distinct modes, means, and articulations of research, development, testing, and use of the brain sciences. And what this then does is opens the door for what may be research tourism or medical tourism. In other words, accessing different ecologies, different cultures, different political engagements so as to be able to get certain things done in research and or perhaps medical practice.
Yeah, just use the whole world population. I mean, we might as well offer them up because, I mean, geez, this is just the best thing since sliced bread, man. I'm just so excited. Aren't you guys excited? This is just wonderful. And maybe they'll use it to stop global warming. You know what I'm saying, guys? They got a zero growth policy, by the way. It's all manufactured artificial scarcity. And they sell you austerity and tell you, take it on the head, do it for the greater good. But the greater good never comes, guys. It's all a big future faking lie.
Boutique brain science. What will we do with that? In one way, it can lead to very, very different balances of power scientifically, economically, intellectually, and this may create hegemonies.
Just control it all, man. On the cellular level, I mean, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? You are making humanity into your image. Not this guy specifically, but I mean, he's helping to do this. He should be responsible to come out and talk about more of the dangers and how, under the terror laws, they just profile police with no rules of engagement. The rules of engagement have completely changed, guys, and it's under profile policing, and they find new ways to engage the public with these technologies. And it's hardly anything to do with the flock cameras, even though that's bad. I mean, I guess. I mean, this is way beyond. They are hijacking what it means to be human on a daily basis. And I'm just here trying to beg everybody to wake up because I don't really like living under this torture and living under this, this force that comes upon you to, take what makes you out of you. Okay. And that's just not happening. I mean, it's not happening willingly. Okay. But I don't know if I'm an anomaly or something. I don't know what it is. But I just got this hunger for the truth inside of me and a hunger to help those that I've seen suffering that have left a permanent scar on my heart and has humbled me for life. So I'm not here entertaining myself to death like most people are, but very disciplined and focused because of what's going on in our society. What I've seen with my own eyes has stopped me in my tracks. I would like to talk about all kinds of other things, but I'm forced because of what they're doing to us and me, to talk about these things all the time. So he's talking right here in this globally aware, sensitive response ethics. Okay, all this is about ethics, blah, 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 because that doesn't matter. Even, like things like the UN disarmament treaty, the laws banning the use of directed energy weapons in warfare on the general public, and where nations are not supposed to use them against each other, but we can clearly see that's what they do. And we look at the UN forced relocation maps that were available a while ago. I don't know if they're still online because AI is censoring everything. But, the places that are burnt out in California just so happen to match that map. Okay. And so, and they, come out showing lasers and all these different things that the military is using, these silent weapon systems, causing the chaos to bring the order.
It's what the French philosopher Michel Foucault referred to as biopower and biopolitics. And as soon as we begin to talk about power and politics, we need to be aware of how the global stage will draw back its curtains and allow us to view the evolving play of neuroscience, and how will we both produce and direct that play.
I'll tell you how they do it really quick. It's just about labeling you as a terrorist. Then, because that whole war is about a shadowy enemy that could be anyone, anywhere, at any time. That's why they do it. It can be anyone, anywhere, at any time. And that gives them this open-ended, ongoing war against the citizens. And that's what I'm trying to say is that they're abusing that whole term and invented that term in order to run the Hegelian dialectic on us. It is the Hegelian dialectic being presented to us on a daily basis, no matter where you go. No matter if it's corporations or government, they all follow the same model and methodology. And only a few control things and run things, guys. It's compartmentalized control.
Ethics informs policy. Ethics must be about the enterprise, and ethics and policy must be temporally relevant and responsive. Like the science it seeks to guide, it must remain self-critical and self-revising. It should be dialectic and strive towards.
Oh, wasn't I just saying that word? And dialectic doesn't necessarily mean something bad, but it's these scripted performances where the owner owns both sides and always wins because they own both sides. And there's this scripted clash in front of the general public. And this is how they give you the false choices over the false problems that they control and the narratives that they control and the topics that they control and present to you as if, this is real. And whatever they're doing publicly, like hearings and things of that nature, it's all the Hegelian dialectic. Nothing is real. They're not telling us anything about anything. And it's all meant to wrap up your energy and siphon it away from reality. Okay? Bottom line.
Cooperation, and in some cases, some level of competition, what is sometimes referred to as co-opetition, is recognizing that competition is part of the human condition, but being cooperative in these enterprises may allow us some level of not only synthetic ethics, but syncretic ethics.
That just means digitizing, creating AI clone versions of ethics and broadcasting it on people.
Where various beliefs are brought together in a way that allows consensus and domains of dissensus. What will the neuroethics be? Well, what can be done is certainly bold, without question.
Yeah, pre-crime based on your brainwave activity.
The questions are, what should be done? And how brave will we be in trying to get this done? Because the thing we don't want to do is to use the science and technology to iteratively unravel the Gordian knot of the brain.
Guys, they are mapping the brain. They're punishing targets for their thoughts, literally punishing you through torture and through other tactics of abuse and control for your thoughts.
Mind only to open a can of worms with the way we regard and the way we use the things that we find and the things that we can do. And so very often in many of the lectures that I give about the brain sciences, I relate back to a personal story, one of my dad, and I'll do so again unapologetically here. My dad was an engineer. He was a nautical engineer. And he liked to fiddle with things, and he liked to use tools. And one of the things he taught me to do, a sort of father and son activity when I was a kid, was to build things and repair things. That's something I still like to do in my spare time. My dad was
like build the electronic prison camp of torture.
a good teacher. He used to bring home a new tool a month. The first Tuesday would be New Tool Tuesday. So I'd get to learn an awful lot about tools, and we'd spend the next month doing that. Well, I remember I was about 10 years old, and we'd been doing this gig for about 4 years. So I had a pretty good toolkit under my proverbial belt. And Dad comes home with a new tool one Tuesday, and I was so excited. I remember I grabbed it. I was going to go running down to our workbench to work on our project. My father put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Jim, slow down. Measure twice, cut once."
Yeah, and that's not going to happen, that little metaphor there, that analogy. It's not going to happen with these psychopathic, narcissistic, power-hungry, power-driven, domination, full-spectrum dominance types. Okay, that's just not going to work. Nothing restrains them, and the history shows it.
But sometimes you can't take back what you do with your tools. Wow, Dad, what a great adage for the brain sciences and for neuroethics. We need to measure twice before we make certain cuts of what we allow ourselves to do or not to do in the brain.
Is that being done at all with the experimentation on the American people? Our own government even apologizing for it, paying people out, like, and not just recently. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, is this just the new world that we're living in where they have merged us with technology? And as this professor says, it's way more advanced than what we're being told. And this whole idea of measure twice, cut once doesn't really go with this, because the types that are running things and seizing the control and the power by these technologies are torturing innocent American citizens who have had no due process, no ability to address accusers, punished for pre-crime, punished because of your thoughts. And so they basically worship the AI like God because they never question what it tells them to do. And they are just yes men to that AI, especially when it's been militarized and weaponized and is being deployed and, has come to market and is being used on the American people.
Sciences. And we certainly need to measure twice the way we develop a new neuroethics that's going to be ever more globally capable. It's a challenge and it's an opportunity.
All right, guys, I'm just going to end. It's not just a challenge. It's not an opportunity. It's an impossibility. History shows that power of this nature is always abused. And it has been. You just go talk to the millions of targeted individuals in the United States that have been blacklisted, isolated, directed speech, street theater, color sensitizing, damage to the inside of their house when the door is locked. Targets come home and the furniture is moved around. Insignificant items are taken. They know when you're coming, they know when you're going. And when you go on your 15-minute walk, they come in your house because they know in live time what you're doing, what you're thinking, where you're going to be. That's how they can put people in your line of sight all the time and cross your path all the time. This is warfare against what it means to be human and autonomous. It's much deeper and much more arrogant and has much more hubris behind it. The decision to move forward in this biodigital convergence, merging us with these machines, and against our will, against our awareness. So those same people that have already committed the war crimes, on innocent American citizens are gonna suddenly have ethics. Ethics is not included in the use of electromagnetic energy weapons that the military uses. And, all they have to do is label you, and next thing you're being tortured with microwave pulse energy in your own house. Anyways, guys, I love you. Just wanted to come to you today. Messenger of the Cross, Pulse Point Media, just dropping the truth. Peace out.